The Seven Jewels of the Yellow Dragon, lecture by Samael Aun Weor. The Fifth Gospel. Many centuries ago, I was reincarnated in China during the historical period of the Zhou dynasty. At that time, I was called Zhou Li and was affiliated with the Order of the Yellow Dragon. The Blessed Logos has ordered me to teach humanity in this era the seven jewels of the Yellow Dragon. I will teach them as I find elements that understand them. So, here is the challenging point. In that age, ascetics worked intensively within the meditation hall. At that time, we were well aware that there are 49 subconscious levels in the mind. We all wanted to reach the stillness and absolute silence of the mind. We were intensely concerned with experiencing the illuminating void. And we were not ignorant that to ascend, one must ascend, and that every exaltation is always preceded by a terrible and fearsome humiliation. The process of bringing the mind to stillness and silence is indeed quite challenging. My dear brothers, it is not about emptying the mind, as some superficial people assume. It goes beyond that. For example, what good would it do if we gave the order to this group to empty their minds, and then the members exclaimed to themselves, "I have emptied my mind"? That would be truly foolish, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be intelligent. Achieving the stillness and silence of the mind is something very different from what is called emptying the mind. It requires, above all, working on the 49 subconscious levels. It is quite challenging, isn't it? Consider that within each of us, within our own planetary body, there is a sum of inhuman psychic aggregates. These completely control the organism and succeed one another. Now, each one of you will understand why the intellectual animal mistakenly called man changes at every moment. One who today swears eternal love to Gnosis is replaced tomorrow by another who has nothing to do with such an oath. One who swears eternal love to a woman is later replaced by another inhuman aggregate that has nothing to do with that oath, and then the individual withdraws. What we think today is not the same tomorrow. Today we have one idea, tomorrow another. As different inhuman psychic aggregates control the machine of the intellectual animal, it undergoes various changes. That is the harsh reality of all this. So, the intellectual animal is a machine, currently controlled by a certain aggregate, and later by another. There is no responsible individual in the intellectual animal. It is worth mentioning again that these aggregates personify our psychological defects. There are so many defects that even if we had throats of steel and 1,000 tongues to speak, we would not be able to enumerate them all in detail. Thus, achieving the stillness and silence of the mind is obviously difficult, isn't it? The task is to make all inhuman psychic aggregates stay still. And do you think that is an easy task? Let's suppose we manage to quiet them at the merely intellectual level. That would not be everything. That would not be sufficient to reach the Buddhist Satori, to experience the Tao, and to truly experience the illuminating void within oneself. So, the work is, I repeat, laborious. One needs to achieve stillness in the mind in each of the 49 levels. But when I speak of mind, it must be understood that there is a gross mistake in assuming that the intellectual animal, mistakenly called man, already has an individual mind, a concrete manas, completely organized, and that is absolutely false. The intellectual animal, the three-brained or three-centered biped, does not have an individual mind, it has minds, and that is different. Each one of the inhuman psychic aggregates inside is indeed a mind in itself. Thus the humanoid possesses many minds. But let me be clear, when you have sworn love to someone, you have done it sincerely, right? However, I don't believe you are all saints either. Sometimes you may not have done it so sincerely, but you swore it. However it was, you swore eternal love. At that moment, you felt yourselves. At that moment, you could say, I love you, I swear eternal love, etc., etc. But afterward, what about it? When the one who swore has been replaced by another inhuman aggregate that has no connection with that oath. What happened to the oath? The words of love. But when the one who swore, you felt yourselves being that self who swore, and at that moment, you could assert that there was no other self-swearing. You felt yourselves the last of the selves and the first of the selves, the authentic and legitimate one, but later, you became convinced that the one who swore was not the only one but one of the many, right? The one who thought so many wonderful things when swearing is not the same as the one who later displaced that one. It is not the same as the one who later swore love to a different person. It is not the same, and has nothing to do with such an oath. However, at that time, the one who swore and thought in his own way. So obviously, we have many minds, right? There is no truly individual mind, which must be created, that is another matter, and it is obvious that they can be created through the transformation of sexual hydrogen Si12. Through incessant transmutations, one can afford to create an individual mind for personal use. But people normally do not have an individual mind. Each of their psychic aggregates, or in other words, each of their cells, has its own mind. Thus, the intellectual animal has many minds. Think about calming so many minds and bringing them to complete silence in 49 regions. Do you think it's an easy thing? It's difficult, right? Within each of these psychic aggregates, or better said, within each of these minds, the essence, consciousness, is bottled up. It is urgent to unbottle it, emancipate it, so that it can experience the illuminating void by itself. So how do we do it? At that time, during the Zhou dynasty in China, we used a very special musical instrument to help us. Unfortunately, that instrument has disappeared. This instrument produced the 49 musical notes, essentially forming the Narayanosian sound of the universe. The musician, the artist, who played with that instrument, made each note sound separately. When the note corresponding to the second subconscious department vibrated, we worked in that second department. And when it resonated the note corresponding to the third department of the subconscious, we worked with it, and when it resonated the 20th note, we worked with that area, and when it reached region 49, with the last of the notes, we performed the last of the works, and the mind became still and in profound silence. That is, we first descended before ascending. Thus, the 49 levels were absolutely still. If the mind in 49 regions was in suspense, obviously, the essence was unbottled, emancipated, and free from all kinds of bindings, entered the illuminating void. It is good for you to know that this is the same holy Akitanok, omnipenetrating, omniscient, omnicomprehensive. If the laws of nature are in that illuminating void, then here, in this physical world, we only see a succession of causes and effects. But the laws themselves, the laws of nature, we can only discover them as they truly are in the illuminating void. Here, we do not see things as they truly are. But in the illuminating void, we know things as they are in themselves, the thing in itself, as the great philosopher of Königsberg, Mr. Immanuel Kant, would say the thing in itself. In the void, essence perceives with the faculties of the being, and everything it perceives is transmitted to the human personality. It is interesting to know that, at such moments, the motor and emotional centers join with the intellectual center to become receptive. Then what the essence in itself is experiencing in that which is real, in that which is beyond time, beyond the body, affections, and mind comes to the human personality, to the intellectual center. And after the ecstasy, the satori of the saints, the samadhi, when the essence returns to the physical body, the planetary body, all memories remain in the mind, in the understanding. The problem to reach, therefore, to experience that which is real, to experience what the illuminating void is precisely in knowing how to quiet the mind, in knowing how to bring it to silence. Obviously, the work begins with a receptive attitude. Various ego memories come to the understanding, passions, betrayals, affections, attachments, tragedies, etc., and they must be understood point by point. They must be seen, observed, understood. When the procession ends, the mind and the intellectual level will be still. Then, a new effort will make us descend to the second subconscious region, new scenes will be experienced, new memories, etc. Working will be essential, necessary, to understand each of these representations and achieve the stillness and silence of the mind. A third effort will take us to the third subconscious region, and in this way, we descend through a symbolic staircase of 49 steps until achieving true stillness, authentic silence. If we think we have already reached stillness, and yet nothing new happens, it is because we have not arrived. In that case, we have to descend into our own atomic hells and challenge the mind and reproach it. First, it must be made to understand, but if it does not understand, it must be reproached, challenged, forced to obey. In this word mind, I am synthesizing all the minds together, all that constitutes the myself. If true stillness is achieved in the 49 subconscious regions, ecstasy will be inevitable, the satori will come. At such moments, immersed in the great illuminating void, we will feel as if the drop is sinking into the ocean and the ocean into the drop. Consciousness will expand more and more, like a drop of water expanding when it falls into the sea deeper and deeper. We will feel like the bird that flies, the babbling brook that slides between its bed of rocks, the little flower moved by the wind, the solitary tree that grows on the plain, the comet that glides swiftly like a drop of fire falling into an endless abyss, the moon rotating around its center of gravity, the atom and the molecule, the bird that practices flight at dawn, the sun rising in the east and then hiding in its bed of fire in the west. All sense of separateness will disappear. We live, so to speak, in an ocean of light that has no shores. Consciousness will expand more and more. Some waves will stand out among that ocean of infinite variety of colors, the holy gods. But since consciousness tends to expand more and more into the great void, into the holy Akitanok, terror comes, and samadhi, ecstasy, is lost. It is necessary to prepare in advance not to come to feel such terror. It is convenient to eliminate the fear's self in advance, so as never to come to fear, because it would be regrettable to lose samadhi, ecstasy. If there is no fear, a transcendental change will come. We will find that the great illuminating void, that holy Akitanok, has a center of gravity, a gravitational center, which is none other than the sacred absolute sun, the sacred solar absolute, from which the holy Akitanok, omnipenetrating, omniscient, and omnimerciful, truly emanates. Then comes the wonderful part, converted into it, or merged with the Ein Sof Paranishpana, which is nothing other than the inner atomic star that has always smiled at us. We will live blissfully in the radiant spiritual sun of midnight, and it will be there, precisely there, where we will come to know the final truth and not anywhere else. It is said that in that great absolute sun, time is 49 times faster than in this world. I invite you to reflect. It is clear, my dear brothers, that here time is 49 times slower. Why? Because there are 49 subconscious departments, and time is completely subconscious, subjective. When I affirm that it is 49 times faster in the sacred absolute sun, obviously, than in the sacred absolute sun, there is no time, right? Because if here it is 49 times slower, and then it happens that in the sacred absolute sun we subtract 49, it becomes 0, right? I am talking about calculations. Then in the sacred absolute sun, certainly, time does not exist. There, the past and the future unite within an eternal present. There, we see the entire universe, with all its famous ages, as an eternal moment. And this is something extraordinary. Certainly, in this physical world, we are victims of Maya illusion. It happens that this other universe whole, unitotal, within the sacred solar absolute,